welcome everybody to the Halos in the Infield podcast. My name is Fernando Mendez. I'm joined here by Andrew Ciccarelli and a special host, Taylor Blake Ward. Taylor, how you been?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you guys asking me to come on, talk a little ball, and it's always good to be back on the podcast world.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
We reached out to the other Taylor Ward, but when he didn't respond, we figured out you might as well go for the next best thing.
Yeah, the other Taylor Ward. That's what. Which one of us is the other Taylor Ward? That's the real question.
That's true. It's the Spider-Man meme where you're like pointing at each other.
Or what's the Rangers had that reliever who I think his name was Blake Taylor or something like that, and he was facing Taylor Ward, and it's like, oh crap, this is tough stuff.
Didn't we have a situation where Will Smith was facing Will Smith?
Mm-hmm. That was NLCS. Was that NLCS last year?
Or was that the World Series when he was on Houston?
I can't remember.
I don't either. I know what happened.
Yeah,
something similar.
There you go. The fact that you guys never took that photo in spring training, I don't know if you ever went out there to cover when you were with Locked On Angels, but that you guys should have taken a photo like that.
When he got drafted, everyone and their mother took a picture of the two of us standing next to each other, and we never knew it. And then suddenly, someone sending me a text or sending him a text, and I'm like, hey, here's a picture of Taylor Ward and Taylor Ward, blah, blah, blah. And, last time I saw him, man, I saw him end of 2019, something like that. I've talked to him, but I haven't seen him. But yeah, it's funny. It's like, when he was in the minors and we'd be standing next to each other, people would, hey, what's going on here? It's fun. He's a good guy. I like Taylor a lot. And, I don't know if he'll say the same about me, but so be it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's still pretty cool when you have a guy who shares your name.
I dig it.
So let's get to it. We've been asked a lot of draft questions. Now, I obviously enjoy the draft because, for any sports franchise, it's your opportunity to build from the ground up. And in baseball, the minor leagues and making sure your minor league system is replenished is one of the most important things. So that's why I love the draft. But I'm not the best at covering, guys in college. Now, I know that's always kind of been one of your favorite things, Taylor, because going back to your podcast days, I remember you'd always go all out for these episodes. And I know you're very knowledgeable, and Andrew is as well. So we wanted to go ahead and bring somebody like you on to go ahead and share your expertise, your knowledge, and we can go ahead and, just have some fun and talk draft.
Yeah, I'm all for it. It's, when I started, I was with Scout.com, which turned into 24/7 Sports, and it was a CBS affiliate, then it was a Yahoo affiliate, and that's why I ended up leaving because it turned into a mess on the baseball side. But Jeff Ellis, if you guys are familiar with Jeff Ellis, he was with me, and it was kind of the two of us. Actually, the guy that was there before us was Kylie McDaniel, who is a very well-known reporter for ESPN right now, covering the draft and the minor, prospects and kind of baseball from that perspective. And we kind of filled in for Kylie after that. And then just through time, it kind of changed. And Jeff and I just kind of peeled off into our own little deal. In time, I was still doing stuff for Fox Sports, but it's still fun, man. Still fun.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I recognize all those names. I've read articles from everyone. That's really cool.
Since 2013 was the first draft I covered. And sadly this year, it's a tough deal. I planned a vacation before the draft announcement came out of when the draft was going to be, and the vacation just lands perfectly on draft time. I'm going to be somewhere in the middle of Northern California when the draft starts, and trying to explain to my family that I'm going to have to peel off for a couple hours to watch the draft or whatever. It's not going to play. So sadly this year, my following the draft live is going to be tough, but I'll have stuff after the draft, talk a little bit about some of the kids I've seen. I mostly see when you cover the draft, obviously for myself, even when I was being paid to do so and everything, my boundary line was kind of California, Southern California. So anyone that was here, I could see in person, and that's still the way it is. But you can either watch TV and watch college baseball or watch these showcases, high school baseball or stuff. But for the most part, you're texting all your connections, whether it be an executive with a front office or a scout that you've met over time. even agents. I've talked to, I have people that are agents out in Florida that I've never met in person, but we've connected. And it gets really interesting to kind of connect the dots, especially, I mean, you guys will get this. A mock draft means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing. There is no importance to a mock draft, but damn it, they're fun to read. They're fun to write. They're informational, and it does benefit you as a reader to kind of get a grasp of what is going on before the draft. But literally, no one has ever had a perfect draft. I mean, Jim Callis, I think, went 16 picks deep one year, and it was like, oh my gosh, Jim Callis knew the first 16 picks. Holy crap! But but realistically, they're pointless. They're meaningless. So the real draft coverage that you want to do is you want to get the accuracy of what the scout or the industry perspective is of a player when he is drafted and how it's going to help the team moving forward that did take that player. And then you can go, shoots. It used to be 40 rounds. I could not tell you a scouting report on every single kid that went to the Angels or the Dodgers or whoever. It gets tough.
Well, it's time to end this interview now then. We were hoping you were going to go.
Okay, well, sorry.
Exactly.
You were going to go all the way through.
Yeah, my top 1,500 amateur players college rankings.
There you go. That's a headline for an article.
Sure.
So how much would you – is there any aspect of like where executives might be influenced by media coverage of a player? And you can kind of see like that kind of influence?
Maybe off-field. Maybe more off-field. So, there's an opportunity at that. But realistically, what is a media member going to say that an area scout has not already had? These area scouts have connections with the families. They have connections with the representatives, with the player themselves. The media may, let's say that I know, Fernando Mendez, who is a potential first, second round pick, and I know him through Twitter or I know him through just talking, but I don't know Fernando's parents. I don't know his representative all that well. I may talk to his representative, and maybe Fernando. I'm picking on you a little bit just because your name's here, and I don't want to use. But let's say Fernando, when he was 17 in high school, smoked a cigarette. For all we know, whatever it is, and now he's a college junior that's draft eligible, and suddenly it's like, oh, that cigarette. We got to be careful that he may have lung cancer down the road or something. And it's like, could we have that media influence? Possibly, those are kind of things. And there are times where news outlet, I would say major media outlets, MLB Pipeline, Baseball America, et cetera, could have a bonus estimate or something that they've been told is the bonus. And that could be something that the team never had. And suddenly there's a little bit of a disconnection there. Those are the things. But realistically, I couldn't tell you that Fernando Mendez needs to go number 1 overall, and I have a bunch of people, executives that trust me on this. They're going to sit there and talk to their area scouts, their cross-checkers, their scouting directors, and say, no, he's probably 20th to 30th pick instead. He's not going first overall kind of deal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So baseball is so much harder to predict than, NBA or NFL, especially, football, it seems like normally the top 3 to 5 players are properly projected more often than not. But if you had to give me your best guess as to who you think the Pirates are going to draft number 1 overall, who would you put your money on if you were a betting man?
So this year's tougher. The Pirates are kind of, every team does it, but there's this is a year where there is not a solidified number 1. We had Adley Rutschman, we had Casey Mize, we had Bryce Harper, Steven Strasburg, et cetera, whatever it is, right? This year, there is an industry consensus of who probably should go number 1, which is Marcelo Meyer down in San Diego region, Eastlake High School. Yep. But the Pirates are kind of maneuvering some money. And like you said, the baseball draft is very different from NBA, NHL, NFL. Money plays a huge part in the baseball draft. So, there's Henry Davis, the catcher at Louisville. There's Jordan Lawler, a high school shortstop out of Texas. Guys like this. And it's kind of looking at, could we say if we went with Henry Davis number 1 and we saved $800,000 with that by signing Henry instead of signing Marcelo. That's going to go to our second, third round pick. I think right now, if I had to say who is going to go number one, I would say Marcelo Meyer. But I think Henry Davis is definitely in that mix. I think he's very much in that mix. I would say Meyer, by my opinion, he was the best player I saw all year, and that's just me. I watched a lot of TV, but in person, the best guy I saw this year was Meyer, and I think that's kind of industry consensus is that Meyer is probably the best player in this draft. But then you start getting into the second pick, it could be totally different from the industry consensus of who is at the top of the board. It could be Jack Leiter, who is one of the better known names in this draft. It could be Khalil Watson, who is a Carolina prep shortstop. I'm trying to think of states here.
Wake Forest High School?
What's that?
Wake Forest High School?
Yes, Wake Forest High School. And, it's kind of all over the board on that. But, yeah, if I had to give you a guess at a 1, 2, 3 here, I think Marcelo Meyer absolutely is not going to get out of the top 3. Detroit loves him at 3. But even at 2, Texas likes him. So I think guaranteed Marcelo Meyer is going to go in the top 3. I think that you could put Jack Leiter in that conversation. There is a chance he could fall to 4. Henry Davis, similar in that conversation. Those are the only guys I would feel confident in saying that they are probably locks to go in the top 5 for sure.
All right. Yeah. That's go ahead. I was going to say.
No. Go ahead. I was going to change it.
Yeah. I was going to say it sounds like a great top 4 to me. I was wondering, you're going back to Henry Davis when you were talking about him maybe being able to be signed lower. Would that be kind of like what the Astros were doing with Carlos Correa back in the day?
Yeah, I've got to think back because Carlos was the draft before I started. So I've only mentally kind of grasped things, but yeah, you go under slot, and that can save you money for the second round, third round comp, whatever it is. For the Pirates, they don't have a comp pick, so their next pick I think is 39, 40-ish range. So I mean, the talent's going to fall off. So to me personally, if you feel that there is a clear number one and in your talent evaluation process, you have come across that this player is the clear number one, and it could save us X amount of money to save, to get the second best player by our opinion. What's that gap? Is that gap large enough to really make the decision saying, yeah, it could set us up better at 40 or whatever it is, 40 picks later, but there's so much that can happen over the span of 40 picks. I mean, so much can happen over the span of 5 picks.
Yeah.
So realistically, I mean, I'm not Ben Cherington. I'm not the Pittsburgh Pirates, anything like that. But I just don't see a scenario where they see Marcelo Meyer as the best talent and then going out and saying, hey, we're going to give you $7.5 million, turn that down. Come on, Yeah. So I think Marcelo Meyer is definitely the guy. But yeah, if it were a situation similar to Correa or something like that, I think it would be more of like Jordan Lawler, because I think Correa was still one of the better talents in the draft. Just it was I don't remember who went number 2 that year. I remember who went 3. It was Zunino went 3, and Zunino was my guy. But I can't remember who went 2. 2012, so long ago, apparently.
It's been a minute. It's one way back. It felt a lot more recent in my head when I said that.
It really does. It's weird. It's like someone will say something, and I'm like, oh, 2005. I'm like, yeah, that was what, 5 years ago? And they're like, nope, 15. And I'm like, all right.
Number 2 was Buxton.
And Buxton, I think, was the viewed perspective is the premium up there. I don't think Correa was as big a fall off, and that's why I'm saying someone like Jordan Lawler, who is still one of the arguably top 3, top 5 talents in this draft. I think that's where it would kind of go to.
That makes sense. That's a good comp with another high school shortstop too.
So one person I wanted to ask about was Jack Leiter. Did I say his last name correctly?
You did.
So he, at some point, people were really excited about him, and he was getting some comparisons to some power arms like a Steven Strasburg. Even some people were even throwing out the phrase generational pitcher. This specifically, I remember, was last year because the Angels were in a position where they kept losing, and people really wanted us to, quote unquote, tank so that we can get this generational type talent. How do you think the viewpoint on him has changed? Because I've seen some outlets who are saying he's going to be, on the lower portion of the tens to, top three. What are you thinking happened with, him?
I think we as a people are more in tune because of social media and because of publications. There is more publication, more social media coverage of amateur talent. So when you hear a name like Kumar Rocker or Al Leiter for 3 years, you're going to sit there and say, yeah, this guy has been a talent for this long, et cetera, et cetera. From a scout's perspective, I don't think much has changed. I think that they have viewed him as one of the better arms in general. Obviously a top of the first round kind of player, top 10, top 5, top 1. Some guys will probably say he could be the best player in this draft. But I don't know about generational. I don't know, I think the Strasburg comments or I will bet you $10 each. I'll bet you $10 each that Harold Reynolds is going to throw a Nolan Ryan comp on him. I promise you that. And you know what? It's funny. They're going to have the side-by-sides, and it's actually going to it's going to match up. But then people are going to say, oh, he's Nolan Ryan. And it's like, no, he's not.
Every time.
He's not Nolan Ryan, damn it. Like, no one is. But the Strasburg, it's just when a guy is kind of going number one, you start generalizing things and saying that this guy's going to be X talent and put him with these guys that have been those X talents. It's not always the case. Jack Leiter, fantastic pitcher. The comparison that I consistently see is Sonny Gray. So how do we all view Sonny Gray? Very good pitcher in the major leagues, top of a rotation, probably a number 2, maybe a number 3 in a rotation. But if that's the talent that you get from the draft, that's a very good talent. Obviously, Steven Strasburg is what he is. He's one of the best pitchers in the game when he's healthy and when he's throwing proper. But, this isn't a Jacob deGrom. This is not a Nolan Ryan. This is not – and I think it's just that we have a view of things because we have heard Jack Leiter's name for a very long period of time, and that kind of transcends to Bryce Harper was on the Sports Illustrated cover. Hunter Green was on the Sports Illustrated cover. And that just transcends in our mind to these legendary talents. That's not the case. And that's not a knock on Jack. I think Jack actually, if I'm, being honest, I think Jack is going to be better than Sonny Gray. It's just a comparison I think is fair to make. But yeah, Jack is a little home run prone. Gave up a few home runs later after a long hitless streak, really remarkable run. Little smaller guy. He's about 6'1"-ish. So trying to figure out the plan on the fastball, things like that. The fastball is fantastic. Third pitch is good, but you kind of want to see improvements of the third pitch. The command's fine. You want to see a little more power to the curveball. And I'm talking, we're nitpicking one of the best players in this draft. I literally, this guy has all-star potential. I'm nitpicking to the point of very, very nitpicky. But yeah, it's little things like that I think take away from that, the perception of this is a generational talent from the fan side as opposed to what the scouts actually have in their notes, because these scouts have seen it for even a new scout is going to understand and comprehend that this guy is good, not historically great.
That makes sense. What do you think about his counterpart at Vanderbilt, Kumar Rocker?
Love him. I think he's great for any organization that he gets into. I think he's someone that can do things off the field that are very important for the game. I think he can grow the game. I think he's an exciting young man. Talent-wise, the velocity kind of went down this year, so people kind of soured a little bit. The performance was fine. Nothing wrong with the performance. The breaking ball is still outstanding. I think people wanted to see a third pitch incorporated a little bit better, and that didn't come into play. And when the fastball, we talk about that 20 strikeout game, the no-hitter in the playoffs and everything. He goes out this year, performs throughout the playoffs and everything, but we don't hear the same stuff. And it's because he's not throwing 97, 98. He's throwing 91 to 95, which is still, he got up to, mid-high 90s this year, but it's just the consistency of the fastball velocity kind of scared people away. I don't know if there's arguments to be made about certain things, arm fatigue and things like that. But realistically, this is a guy that with this draft itself, there are, I would say, 8, possibly 9 guys. I would say 8 guys at the very top of the draft that are superior talents to the rest of the draft. Kumar Rocker is in that category. I would say he's probably 6, 7, 8 of the 8.
Okay. That makes sense of why he's been kind of falling down the draft boards and those mock drafts, which I know of that. How many meeting?
No,
I mean, so valuable.
Yeah, well, yeah. By the way, I have a mock draft coming out Saturday night. I hope you guys can check it out.
Yeah. So, though you're not in the prediction business, I think that's what you always used to say. Who would you think would fall down to 9, and who do you think the Angels are looking at in that position? Right, they're drafting 9th, correct?
They are. So the Angels, I think, want one of those top 8. And all it would take for them to get one of those top 8 is for one team to go under slot ahead of them. I think realistically, you're looking at one of 3 players that have a chance to fall. I think Kumar Rocker is one of those guys, but I think he probably has a less likelihood. I think Brady House, who is a Georgia infielder, shortstop, third baseman.
Winder Borrow, yeah.
Yeah.
He's my favorite in the draft. So
yeah, Brady House is a guy who I've been on for quite a while, like him. And Jackson Jobe, the top prep pitcher in the draft, who some people would argue from a raw scouting perspective is the top talent pitching-wise in this draft. I think those are the 3 guys that have a shot to get to the Angels. I think there's just as much of a chance that they don't, any of them. And I think at that point, I think the Angels are going to look to possibly maneuver a little bit of money. I don't think they're going to go crazy under slot or anything like that. But I think that you're looking at probably the top college pitcher, top college hitter in the conversation, which would be Matt McClain at UCLA, Ty Madden at Texas, or a flurry of high school athletes. Harry Ford is a name. Will Taylor is a name. Bubba Chandler is a name. Benny Montgomery is a name. These are kind of the guys I think that if things don't play, I think those are the guys that kind of do. But if one of those top 8 falls, that's a tough conversation to have in the draft room and sitting there trying to figure out what's going to be best moving forward into the rest of the draft.
So what's your take on Brady House? Because I've been following him, and he's one of my favorite players in the draft.
I was on him. I was high on him at this time last year. I'm high on him, but not as much right now. I don't know how much I buy into the hit tool.
Yeah, I've heard he's been inconsistent.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a chance to be an average hitter. But if I'm drafting that high, I kind of want a little more. And that's just me being greedy. Also, potential position change. I think he can play shortstop, but realistically, I think his value is going to be a third. I'd rather have it at a premium position kind of thing. So it's like I said, I'm nitpicking heavily on one of the top talents in the draft. And that's what we do. For some reason, the 5th round pick, we absolutely love the 5th round pick, but we nitpick the first pick. And it's like, what are we doing? Why do we like this guy in the 5th that went 100 picks after whatever? And it kind of changes things. But, yeah, I like Brady House. Future potential, I think there's other guys that I like more. And that's kind of where I would just leave it. But definitely a guy that I think belongs in the top 10 of this draft.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, was Brady House the guy that you said could be a potential 2-way player, Andrew?
Yeah, I think he throws 97 off the mound. I was looking at his, I think it's Perfect USA, whatever the, where they, I'm messing up the name. I just had the page in front of me. But basically where they record your velocity off the mound, velocity from shortstop, that he was being clocked off the mound at 97 miles per hour.
I believe it. I've only seen him as a hitter. I know that he has thrown in the past, but I think the future is purely on the hitting.
He's already
a little purely on the hitting. The guy I think you guys might be thinking of is Bubba Chandler. He's probably the top 2-way player in this draft.
What do you think Bubba Chandler's going to go?
You know, I thought the Angels might take him at 9 for a while there, but I think the Giants really like him at 14, but I don't think they like him enough. I don't know if the draft model they're a team that really plays well on the draft models, and I don't know if he fits in there. So I'm going to say he's kind of a wild pick. I would say anywhere from 14 down to 40. I mean, probably on
big range.
Well, probably closer to 14. But in all honesty, I mean, it's funny. You say big range, and it's true. That is, what is that, 25 picks or so? But realistically, the talent level of these kids and how close match they show up in draft models, how close they are according to each scout and evaluation, the 15th pick. I mean, well, let me make sure I get. No, realistically, it's like the 15th, 16th, 17th pick, talent-wise, is not that different from the guy that goes 30-something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's really not that different. So it's kind of like I said, there are 8 guys in this draft that are superior to the rest at this moment. Of course, everything can change. The draft is a total crapshoot. You have to develop. You have to do all these things. But from a talent perspective at the moment, there are 8 guys that are at the top of the board. I would say there are 10 more guys after that are in that next tier. After that, you've got a list of about 50 guys that are, you're throwing darts.
Do you think there's any favorites? So I've heard, like, with the Rockies, how they kind of got rid of a lot of their analytics department. And I was wondering, are there any teams that are kind of literally just throwing darts at the board?
I wouldn't say throwing darts per se. A lot of teams rely on draft models. So it's, you've got physicality, you've got performance, you've got age, you've got tools, scouting opinions, all kinds of things like that. And every team has a board, and it's kind of like almost like a power ranking. It's late at night. I'm drawing blanks, but it's, you have your players listed of what you want literally until you get down to the 30th, 40th round. Now, we only have 20 rounds this year, but you're going to have every name listed, and you have your favorite at the top. Now, could you move down 2 slots or something like that? Sure, and you're progressively taking the names out and everything. But every team has, we talk about rankings. Rankings don't really mean a whole lot of things, prospect rankings, but these teams do it. Every team has their own internal top 30 prospects for every organization or whatever, however many it is based on a tool set and everything like that. It's the same as the draft. I would have, like I was telling you guys, Marcelo Meyer, he's the best guy I saw all year. He's my number 1 at the top of the board. My number 2, probably Jack Leiter, Henry Davis, Khalil Watson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And you get down into the 3rd round, and I have a guy that's 89th on my board that I just, for whatever reason, suddenly the opinions in the room just kind of come together and everything. So there's not really any throwing darts, but there is definitely a little bit of guesswork that comes together with this board and everything, and who your favorites are at the top of the board. But throwing darts, I'm not so sure I'd use that term.
That makes sense. So
go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. I'm cutting you off again right there. So I was going to say, who would you say has the biggest influence in the draft room? Do you think like different teams have majorly different strategies, or that most teams are going about it the same way?
It does change team to team. For the most part, the general manager is going to have the ultimate say. But realistically, a lot of general managers trust the people that they hired for that position, the scouting director, and the general manager will say, who is at the top of our board? And scouting director will say, player X. And he says, great, that's the guy that we're going to, and the general manager has gone and seen these guys, and that's kind of, but, the general manager will say something along the lines of, hey, if it comes down to a split in the room, take the pitcher or take the hitter. And things like, and that's the ultimate say. The general manager is the one that builds this team. But the scouting director has a big say. Area scouts, when you get deeper into the draft, area scouts are going to have a good say on things. And obviously, if it comes down to it, the owner is going to be the one that has the ultimate say. The owner can come in and say, find a way to get this kid from Texas, because I went to Texas, my best friend went to Texas, and this is his son's best friend, and he's the best player I've ever seen in my life. Well, you know, and he wants this amount of money, and I want to give him that money. But those things happen. The owner, I mean, literally sometimes the owner will come in with Baseball America publication and say, why the hell do we not have a top 100 prospect? Go get me a top 100 prospect. What's going on? It's happened, and it's gotten people fired. So prospect rankings, I mean, you talk about media influence earlier. Prospect rankings can have that media influence at times. And that media influence can have an impact in the draft room where owners have come in or executives or chairmen or whatever have come in and say, why do we not have a top prospect? And it's like, well, this is why. And the owner's like, that's BS, you know, it's not right. And whether it is or isn't. So the pecking order still remains the same of owner, GM, scouting director. But realistically, I think for most teams, it's the general manager and the scouting director have kind of come together with this decision based on what their scouting staff has mostly told them.
Are you telling me that there's a chance that you have gotten somebody fired with your mock drafts?
Doubt it. if so, then I probably got a good bounty on my head.
There you go.
I'll split the price with you. I'll run off to Mexico. You guys can split the cost. Just send me Venmo or whatever it is to me.
Hey, that sounds like a deal.
It has to be something untraceable. Catch you on the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
All right. So next question I have for you is name a couple guys who you think are going to fall to the second round that anybody who's in that first round, maybe near the end of the draft, maybe you should take another look at. Like who are some of your favorite guys you think are going to drop down there, if any?
I'm gonna stay local on this. Gage Jump is a guy that I absolutely love. I think he's one of the most pro-ready prep arms I've seen in a long time. Only problem is he's about 5'11", 5'10", and he's a pitcher. Lefty, though, I love his pitch ability. He's, you know, from a premier program with serious performance at that premier high school program. I really like him. A kid down in San Diego area, his name's Carson Williams. I don't know if he's going to make it out of the first based on some new information. But there's a chance he ends up in the second round. Two-way guy who has zero interest in pitching, so he's going to be a shortstop hitter, but super athletic kid. I really like him. I give you guys one. I got to think of the kid's name. He's up at Washington State. He's a first base only guy. Actually, probably a DH. His name is Kyle something, man. It's an Italian last name if I'm remembering right, but just a kid that I think is going to hit. I absolutely love his hit tool. I love the power potential. He's really positionless unless you trust that he could play first base, but I think he can hit. A guy that I think people are low on that I think could be third, fourth, fifth round even is a kid named Max Ferguson out of Tennessee. Second baseman, he's a middle infielder, but he's not going to play shortstop. I think he can hit. And that's more me on the tools, and the scouts probably disagree, which the scouts are way more knowledgeable than I am. But for whatever reason, I really like this kid. I think he has a chance to hit. And I'm on board with Max Ferguson. Another guy there, when I get kind of deeper into the deal, I think of first baseman, because the value of a first baseman in the first round just doesn't match up. But first basemen continually hit, and they find ways to hit, and you're gonna make it with some. You know, eventually you're gonna take a first baseman late in a round, and it's gonna connect. Look at Jared Walsh, and that's an extreme scenario, but yeah, I think, you know, take a chance on a first baseman in the 5th, 6th, 7th round that you believe in the hit tool. Screw it. If he's a first baseman, he's a first baseman. You got something. Those are the guys. Nico Cavadas at Notre Dame is one of those guys. Yeah, those are the guys that I'm really on board with. Out here, JT Schwartz, UCLA. Love him. Absolutely love him. Probably 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Maybe closer to 3rd. Absolutely love him. First base kid. He's a development project. The swing, you're going to have to get him into his power. But I'll tell you, if you can tap into his power, that is a serious hitter in the middle of your lineup. I really like him. And like I said, the reason that certain players are ranked or go in the first or second round is they're better. Scouts believe they're better. And there's, and scouts are way more knowledgeable than I am. But there are certain guys in that third to fifth round tier that I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, man, that could be a steal based on my sole opinion. And I'd say Max Ferguson, Nico Cavadas, the kid from Washington State, the first baseman there, JT Schwartz. Those are the guys after the second round I'm really in on. Oh, and Jace Thompson, North Carolina, super athlete, all the tools in the world. Not sure he can hit, but if he can, that guy's a stud.
Feels like there's always 1,000 players coming out of North Carolina every year.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's UNC. He's UNC, and the hit tool, he's going to strike out a ton. He reminds me of Trace Thompson. It just so happens the name is similar, everything like that. But you remember Trace Thompson, the tools that he had power, he could field. It's just he never hit, and that's kind of where I am with Jace Thompson, Trace, Jace. Now I get it. No wonder I'm comparing the two. But I just see similar profiles, but definitely a guy that I think is interesting. So there's names down there that I like that the industry's maybe lower on, which is, I'm like I was telling you guys, I'm kind of a nobody, but I'll take it. I like these guys.
I mean, you've been covering it every year for a long time now, so you definitely have an eye for this. Do you have any players that you were really high on in the past that really just hit it big?
Yeah, Jared Kalenic. Obviously, a major league product hasn't been there yet, but every year I usually have a guy, like a guy that I absolutely just love. And I'm trying to think of who I've missed on more than I've hit on, because I love Shane Baz, and we're seeing what he's doing with Tampa right now. Kind of coming up. Shane Baz was a guy. Jared Kalenic is a guy that I never expected what Jared Kalenic is doing at all. I thought kind of my perception was always Jared Kalenic reminded me of Jay Bruce, and Jay Bruce was a very good baseball player. Could Jared be better than Jay Bruce? Absolutely. So it's kind of like, did I expect this? No, but I still like him. And I'd say that's kind of I would say Jared is probably the top guy that I'm a little higher on when it comes to things. Probably unfair to say, but Adley Rutschman. I mean, gosh, I love him. How can you not? I mean, I think he's got future superstar status kind of thing. I really like him. Those are kind of the guys. I'm trying to think of who I floundered on, but I try not to speculate too hard. But it's the guys you flounder on are the more important ones. The ones that you miss are the ones that you go back and try to understand why you missed. And those are more important than the ones you hit on. And even like Jared Kalenic, like I liked him. I thought he'd be good. Why did I not think he'd be as good as he is? And that's where it's kind of meeting that gap. But a guy that I really liked, and I loved him. And I thought he was a middle of the rotation starter. And I don't think he ever made it out of high A, was Mark Sappington, who I think was a 5th round pick for the Angels back in like 2010, 11, something like that. I thought he was a stud. And I don't think he ever made it out of high A or double A. But I really liked him. Thought he had a chance to be a middle of the rotation starter.
What turned out to be the issue? Was it control?
Command, mostly command, just kind of execution. I'd have to look back. I was really young in kind of my growth of that kind of stuff at the time. But I think more than anything, it was just execution and lack of a third pitch. He did not have a third pitch. And the fastball was pretty straight. So,
Was he a starter? Was he a starter?
For a time. They moved him to the bullpen over time. Another guy during that time that I thought was going to be pretty good was G-Man Choi. But I thought he'd be better than he is. I thought he'd be an on-base machine, and it just didn't play. But I really liked him. I loved Tyler Matzik. And you're seeing what that was a little different because of some internal things, but love Tyler Matzik. Definitely biased to Brad Miller because when I worked for the High Desert Mavericks, he was kind of our star player, and Love Brad Miller. I'm definitely biased there. Definitely a few stories to go with it. But the guys you miss on are the ones that you need to learn from. That's the most important thing is understand why you missed. And that's kind of where I go with it.
Do you keep track in like a journal or anything of like the type of players that you're following?
I do. Yeah. I've got my notebook. And I end up, I've got my 2021 notebook, but I've got about 40 notebooks back at the house. Yeah, I mean, you keep track, and it's like my 21 notebook, from what I saw in spring training for certain guys that had video or were with the major league, roster or whatever. And, I have it from that day to when I saw them the first week of the season to the third week of the season to the fourth. You look for the adjustments. You look for constant changes, things like that. But yeah, I've got notes.
For days.
It's a long notebook. The ones that you get wrong, though, I feel like it's more mental, and I think that you've got a good spot. Is I need to write them down. You need to write them down and know why you hit or why you missed.
That's good advice.
All right, so one of our last questions here, because I know you got to wrap up here. So another thing that the three of us share that we're passionate about is minor league baseball. And I remember back a couple of years ago, Rob Manfred in Major League Baseball decided they were going to cut 40 teams. Now, Andrew and I have had the privilege of interviewing a couple of former baseball players, Matt Antonelli being a big one. We recently interviewed Ty Buttrey, and we wanted them to talk about how difficult life in the minors is. So I want your opinion. A, are minor league players underpaid? I know that's a laughable question, but some people just don't even think that way. And B, what needs to be done to make life in the minors more feasible to the sense where guys can actually afford to play baseball and not basically pay out of pocket?
Yes, minor league baseball players are not paid squat. They're not paid shit. Sorry, my bad.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
It's they work. They'll show up a 7:00 game, right? They'll show up at the stadium at 2 or 3 o'clock, 4 hours there, 3-hour game, hour post game, shower, everything like that, and decompress. So you're talking about roughly an 8 to 9 hour shift at work. Some of these guys aren't making $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month. So do the math. I mean, you're talking about hourly wages right around $4 or $5 per hour. I mean, who can do that? Oh, and it's just that's just an unfair certainty. And obviously, some guys put in the work more than others and everything. But realistically, you need to be giving these guys close to minimum wage. So even if you said, even if you said that it was to the point of, we're going to make an assumption that you play 140 games, we're going to times that by 8 hours, and we're going to pay you minimum wage, $15, $10, whatever minimum wage is per state. Make your own decision, whatever. I don't care. $12, whatever. But if you did that, that's fair assessment. You can at least, get away with that and explain to a kid, look, you're not going to be making more than minimum wage, but we're going to pay you something that's going to at least, allow you to live consistently. As for how to kind of establish things, I think what they do in the Dominican is actually really cool. It's essentially almost like a college program. You have housing. It's a dorm. You have housing. You have a rule, no girls, no smoking, no whatever, things like that. And you have to go to classes. And, for me, I think that English-speaking players in today's baseball, we need to be teaching kids Spanish. So we're teaching the Latin kids down in the Dominican English. Why aren't we teaching, at least in some sense, trying to have our English players learn a little bit of Spanish or Japanese, certain languages that blend well with baseball. So if you can find, how much would it cost to buy a chain, an owner to buy 4 houses? 4 houses within reason of the ballpark. You put the buses there, you transport them from there and there, and they live in these dorms. And it does take away certain freedoms. It takes away certain freedoms because you have to abide by the rules of everything there. But why can't you buy these housing facilities instead of saying to a kid in San Bernardino, who's making $1,200, hey, go find a place to rent, and he's making $1,200 a month, and his rent is $3,500. And you've got 5 kids sitting in a house in a one bedroom house, sleeping 4 to a bed or whatever. That's unfair, and that's kind of the problem. I think we also need the NFL has their draft. I'm trying to think of they'll put the draft deal or a speaker deal with the kids that are eligible to be drafted in the NFL. They'll put them into this meeting, and there'll be women outside. There'll be things outside, and these super hot women go and they say, "Hey, here's my number. When you get to the NFL, call me." Blah blah blah, things like that. And then the speaker comes out on stage with the girl and says, "By the way, this girl has herpes or whatever." And he says, make your decisions wise. Teach the kids just how to be a professional in these sports. Teach them life of baseball, life of being a baseball player, life of things like that. You can do that in a dorm. You can do that all together. So why not try and house these kids? Also, don't take away 100-something damn jobs from baseball players for each organization by eliminating teams and also eliminating jobs throughout those communities. Dear God, just.
Dude, the worst part about that is the fact that they lied. It was like, oh, well, we're doing this so we can increase the wage. The wages went up by like $100, $200.
No, it was junk. It's I was sitting there thinking about Burlington, Iowa. Burlington, Iowa is not that great of a place, and even the people who live there can tell you that. It's perfectly fine saying this, but Burlington, Iowa, the Burlington Bees themselves. X amount of people go to each game. It's less than 1,000 people per game, whatever it is. But how many employees lost seasonal jobs right there? That were very important seasonal jobs for the year right there in Burlington, Iowa. They lost housing. They lost food, whatever it is. You eliminated a very serious part of that community with jobs, income to the community. And I mean, I'm using one city, but 40 damn cities across the nation. And these are serious towns. I mean, look at how they treated Fresno. Fresno's population, I think, is in the top 40 cities in the United States. And you're talking about one of the top most populous regions of the United States, and you're going to try and bully your way into telling them they're moving or doing this and that? Come on, Robbie. Like, what is this?
I grew up in Bakersfield, so I mean that's another market that just lost a team.
Exactly, and you understand that there was less than 1,000 people at every Bakersfield game, and it was specialty nights. But shoot, there was maybe
horrible
less than 500 people. It was horrible. But how many jobs? How many people had jobs there in Bakersfield? Which Bakersfield is not a cheap place to live, even though it's not the greatest place in the world. I mean, no insult here, Fernando, and no insult to people in Bakersfield. I absolutely love the city, but it's the armpit of California.
Yeah,
I love Bakersfield. I really do. But, I mean, shoot, what is that, 50 people per night that don't have a job suddenly? Even if it's 20 people, 50, whatever it is, they don't have a job anymore. And that's it's upsetting. But I would say try and figure out a way to house the players properly. Let their fun – if you're going to pay them crap, even if you're paying them minimum wage, find a way to let them – take that minimum wage to at least have a career, at least have a job, not a hobby.
Yeah, you would think like the economics of it would equal out to a point where if you give them better food, better housing, and even one player turns out to be like a superstar in a 20-year period, that value from that one player for the years in arbitration would be more than all the money it costs to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I looked it up. It's if you gave minimum wage to all your minor league players, I think it would cost you around $5 to $6 million. And I'm trying to remember just off the top of my head, but $5 to $6 million. I don't have $5-6 million laying around anywhere, but what's a middle reliever cost?
Exactly.
I mean, what realistically, you sign a free agent middle reliever, he's signing for $4 million. So you're telling me that you can't afford a middle reliever for 200 kids to have a chance to be that middle reliever or more? Come on.
Yeah, you know that development is big on stress. When people don't feel stressed, they learn better. They are more secure in their life. They're more likely to put more effort into what they're doing. I just don't understand.
No, I mean, like I said, I don't have $5-6 million around, and I can't tell someone that's a billionaire what to do with their money because they became billionaires for a reason. I have no disrespect for people that have money. I don't think, when people talk about these billionaires as bad people and being greedy or whatever, they made their money. They were successful with what they did. I'm proud. I'm very happy that they were able to do that. But you're telling me that one guy as a role player on your major league roster, you can't look at 200 kids or 150 kids and say, I'm going to invest $10 million for a year on those 200 kids with housing, minimum wage. Shoot, you want to add benefits, that'd be ideal, but you don't have to.
How about something normal like nutrition?
Exactly. And it just seems so simple as an investment saying, I'm going to spend X amount, but the problem becomes, hey, I don't have to spend that 10 million because they're going to play for $1 million that they cost me or whatever it is. So it's an iffy situation, but I think there's a way to really do this right. And I think that, Major League Baseball has really let down the kids in the systems.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this, as somebody who's a member of the press yourself and has been for a while, why do you think that stories like this that need to be talked about aren't getting the attraction that they deserve?
A bit of a political game.
Okay.
National writers obviously got there for a reason, same as the billionaire owners and everything like this, but they got there for a reason. Part of that reason is the relationships they built with certain people. And you don't always want to burn bridges. And I'm not specifying anyone. I'm really not specifying anyone, but also lack of care. I mean, people across the nation in general do not care about some kid playing baseball that's not Mike Trout. People don't care about baseball in general. Look at Mike Trout. He's a generational talent. How many commercials per night do you see Mike Trout on and shoots? I was watching a commercial just the other day and I asked my wife, I said, do you know who that is? And she said, no, it was Patrick Mahomes. And it's like, people just don't care. And it's just part of it. And it's like, you tell me how many people in the nation know who Mike Trout is? What's the percentage of people in the nation that know who Mike Trout is, or Shohei Ohtani, or Fernando Tatis, or Aaron Judge? How many people in the nation at percentage know that? Then you start saying, okay, by the way, there's this 20-year-old kid who's not making minimum wage down in Knoxville, Tennessee, or wherever it is. Are you willing to support this case? And it's like, no. Like, what are you talking about? So it's lack of care. It's lack of care across the nation. It's a very specific market. I'm sure that I'll tell you right now, I'm sure there are other places that have the same issue, other businesses. And I'm not talking sports. I'm talking there's businesses that have this problem that I have no idea about. And sadly, I might not care about, and whether that's ignorance to that business or just lack of interest, whatever it is. And that's the sad reality we talk about baseball as America's pastime. It's not. It's really not. And America's pastime now is kind of pop music or whatever the hell it is. I don't know, but people just do not care. People just don't care.
It's just crazy though to think of a situation where, if I were to tell you, oh, here's a guy who's going to be making, $4 an hour eating poorly. I mean, you think that I'm probably talking about a child working in an unfortunate situation like a sweatshop or something. Yeah. But no, we're talking about an 18-year-old kid who, might be wanting to start a family. I mean, there's some of the guys who have families. Could you imagine having a 2 or 3-year-old child? You're married, you're trying to support them, but you can't even support yourself. You're literally going to 7-Eleven to get, a cookie for $1 because that's what you can afford. And that's what Ty Buttrey told us, that, a lot of these guys have to go to the gas station and get, $1.50 cakes because that's what they can afford to eat. They give you $20 in per diem a day in the minors, but they take most of it away.
I think part of it too is people don't look at baseball as a business. I mean, we're talking Angels mostly, right? 3 million fans at Angel Stadium every year, or 3 million tickets sold, whatever it is. there are 50,000 people of that 3 million or whatever that still look at baseball as a business, as opposed to, hey, it's Tuesday night, let's go to a baseball game. And I mean, I'm not, that was me. That's the way I want to look at baseball. Is I want to look at baseball and say, let's go buy a ticket, let's go buy a hot dog, let's go have a beer. It's Tuesday night, let's go to the ballpark. But people don't realize that minor league baseball provides that at such a different cost. And these businesses, people don't look at it as a business, and they look at it as a career dream. It's like almost like an internship in a sense. And they're like, yeah, if a kid wants to dream and be a baseball, that's the thing. I mean, how many kids do we just absolutely crap on when they're 8 years old and they're like, I want to be a Major League Baseball player? And you'd be like, sucks. You're going to be a McDonald's cook. I don't know. And it's like, we need to get back to telling kids, hey, dream big, let's do this. And we need to establish that Major League Baseball, or minor league baseball for that matter, is a business. And these are jobs. When you become a professional baseball player, that is your job. Same as the guy that's working behind the counter at Walgreens, or the guy that is president of the United States. It is their job. And it just so happens that, this one guy that has this job in baseball is not playing for the Angels. He's playing for the Inland Empire 66ers. And he still has a way to go to, get advance in his job. But that job only permits him X amount of money. And when he gets to the peak of his job, he's going to make millions of dollars. People suddenly, hear that gap and they're like, whatever. And that's where we need to kind of fix it, is make people realize this is a business. These guys have jobs as professional baseball players. They're only part-time jobs, sadly, but we need to get them to a point of, these are jobs that need actual wages that allow them to make a living.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Do you think that the next step will be maybe Congress taking a look at it through like the federal exemption, so they don't have to pay a minimum wage?
I'm not a political person. I've seen that report. I've read that report. There's a lot of it that I just don't know. I'll be real honest with you. I'm a history buff and things like that. Politics was just never something that I delve into. So sadly, I don't know if I can give you a proper response on that one.
No worries. All right. Last question I have for you. So in 2018, you were doing Locked On Angels, correct?
19 was my first year.
Okay. All right. So, maybe just going back to your fandom then in 2018, Shohei Ohtani, think back to his rookie season. Did you ever think that the version of Shohei Ohtani today that we're seeing before our eyes would have ever been possible?
No. So I thought about that. The spring training deal, I didn't care. You knew like the spring training numbers sucked, and all these reports, he can't hit, he can't pitch. It's like, shut up. It's spring training.
It was a big deal everywhere.
I legitimately thought he would be a star pitcher, star-studded pitcher, one of the tops in the league. Someone that we put in with Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom, guys like that. I did not think he'd hit a lick. I genuinely thought he'd be a 200. I thought he'd be a 200 hitter that ran into 20 home runs by surprise. I never thought he'd hit. We're seeing what he's doing as a pitcher, and it's getting there. He's arguably one of the top 5 hitters in baseball. I mean, I think you could argue he's a top 5 hitter in baseball, and kind of has been. Did not expect that. Absolutely did not expect that at all.
Yeah, I think people really critiqued his hitting. His mechanics were off. And that was the biggest thing during that spring training. It was him trying to adjust to the pitching here. And, he still had that really long, awkward leg kick back then. And, it was strange. Like from the end of the Freeway Series in 2018, that they do during spring training, till like that first game, he's like, I'm going to start kicking my leg and I'm just going to do the toe tap. And all of a sudden, it just kind of clicked. But yeah, man, what we're seeing this year out of Shohei Ohtani is just, he's not a person. He's a machine at this point.
I think the thing that we all missed was his hips. If you did a side-by-side square right of the hips, the belt line, and you put it next to Bryce Harper, I don't know if you can tell who's who. He has so much torque in that mid-core. He's so strong in his core, so strong in his core. His hips have such great rotation. It's so violent, but so clean of a swing. That extension or the separation he gets from having his hands back the way he does. I think we just ignored the most obvious part of what Shohei is, and it's that torque. And I think that's why we saw such a violent swing. We didn't look at the naturalness of it. And that's where I just was like, yeah, this kid's going to hit 500-foot home runs, but I just don't see where these hips match up. And it's just like, oh, my God. I mean, dude's hitting 270, 280, 290, whatever he's hitting. And he's one of the best hitters in baseball. It's remarkable.
You want to talk about guys you whiffed on, right?
Yeah, I'm off. No, I am all for it. And like I said, I thought this guy would be, 200, 220 hitter, whatever. On base percentage would be serviceable. He'd strike out a ton. He'd hit some home runs. He'd be a hell of a pitcher. And yeah, I'm cool with being wrong on that. And I'm starting to figure out why I was wrong with that. And I'm happy with what I've come up with.
Yeah, right. I memean, just baseball fans in general, man. I mean, sometimes you just got to sit back and appreciate greatness. And, I have a 6-year-old who's asleep in the other room. And, he goes to games and he's starting to really like it. But, just one day I just want to be able to sit back and tell him, like, you know what, son, like, you just got to sit back and enjoy it. We've all had those players that we just sat back and truly enjoyed. But he really is a guy that he's going to tell his grandkids about.
It's funny. I was obsessive with Shohei when he was in Japan, all the way to coming over. And it didn't matter who he was going to sign with. I was obsessive about him. But it's just no one expected this. And how can
Absolutely.
you? And, the world is ignoring how many people in the world know who we talk about the percentage of Americans that know who Mike Trout is or whatever. How many people in the world know who Babe Ruth is? It's a large number.
Absolutely.
We need to start getting the world to know who Shohei Ohtani is.
100%.
Yeah, that goes to the mismarketing of just several players in general. But, that goes on certain people who run baseball. Maybe we'll stay out of that business for now. But maybe thanks. A future episode.
Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, they should definitely be doing a lot more to market Shohei Ohtani. Hopefully they get that memo. And if you guys are listening to this, market Shohei Ohtani. That's just a money printing machine. That's what you guys care about, right? Come on, Robbie.
Yeah, they have a 24-hour camera, right? On Shohei Ohtani at all times in Japan.
So whenever they absolutely do.
Now keep this in mind. This is the most documented player in baseball, maybe ever, right?
Yeah.
No one knows what his off-field activities are.
That's true.
Yeah.
I love it. And that's a very cool thing. No one knows what restaurant he went to. No one knows what he's doing post-game, pre-game, anything like that. But he's the most documented player in baseball. No, everyone knows that he was at the stadium at 1:37 p.m. with 57 seconds, but no one knows what he did before that. I love that about him. Absolutely love it about him.
Shohei Ohtani is definitely an Instacart DoorDash kind of guy. I feel like he doesn't get out. Like you'll find photos of like Mike Trout like at Petco on Twitter. He's here. He's at Fogo de Chao. Something like that. But yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, I never hear about Shohei Ohtani. Like people tell me like, oh yeah, Mike Trout's favorite hot dog place is over here. You can catch him there most Wednesdays. Like I hear stuff like that all the time. But yeah, man, Shohei Ohtani like literally lives under a rock.
But he's the most documented player in baseball, which is just so odd to me. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
How long do you think that lasts for? Maybe until next year.
Well, ask the commissioner's office.
We'll find out. Yeah.
The Shohei Ohtani reality show. Get ready for the reality show. All right. Andrew, any closing thoughts for Taylor before we let him plug everything he's got going on?
No, yeah, just thanks, man. You're extremely knowledgeable. It's been great talking.
No, it's been really fun, guys. I really appreciate being on with you guys, and thanks for asking me to come.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, the one thing I love about podcasts, especially for me, I listen to them all the time because I travel or I'm in the car all the time driving in between jobs, is that with podcasts, you almost feel like you're friends with somebody, even though you don't directly know them. And, your voice was so familiar to me for such a long period of time. So it feels like I'm having a conversation with somebody who I've, listened to for years. So this has been a really cool experience for me. Thanks for taking the time. And before you hop off, where can people find you? What do you have going on right now? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for listening when I was on Locked On and everything, and then that was kind of the thing is you want to be able to be personable. Vince Scully. Everyone that's ever listened to Vince Scully thinks they're buddies with him, and it's like when I was growing up, it was Uncle Vin. Uncle Vin was telling bedtime stories. So I appreciate those kind words, man. I really do. You can follow me on Twitter at Taylor Blake Ward. You can follow my work at homeplateview.com, new website that's up and running and pretty fun to be a part of and kind of start pushing a few things. And in the near future, I can't share too much just yet, but look out for a book that'll be very fun to push out to an audience. And it's going to have some Angel stuff, going to have plenty of Angel stuff that's going to be really fun to find out about.
Perfect. Well, do me a favor. When that book comes out, let me know, and we'll plug it any way we can. We'll do everything we can for you.
You got it, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, on behalf of Andrew and Taylor, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And we hope you guys enjoyed this draft episode and everything else that Taylor brought to the table. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.